The road to 8 wins starts today.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College. I am your host, AJ Black. I'm the editor of Eagle Insider. Thank you all for joining us. Locked On Boston College is the only daily Boston College podcast out there. I am your host and editor of Eagle Insider. I give you all the Boston College news you like, and I'm glad you're here with me today. On today's show, we are going to talk about the start of spring camp. It opens up in just a few hours. I'm going to give you 3 names I think Boston College needs to have big seasons if they're going to win 8 games. I'm going to talk about all of them and why they are crucial for a big season. Today's episode is brought to you by Nissan, by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay with us for the Armada Team of the Week later in the episode. Let's kick this off. I don't know about you folks. Spring football makes me excited. It makes me feel like the winter is finally over. We get some football coming back. We can talk football. We get new names. There's transfers, new coaches, freshmen, all the goodies that are there to get ready for the 2025 season. And this is year number 2 for Bill O'Brien. This is a big season for him. He's got a tough schedule, 3 playoff caliber teams on his 3 previous playoff teams. I would consider Georgia Tech potentially a potential playoff team on their schedule for next season. But the big question is, how can Boston College take that next step? How can they move past that 7-win zone that they just keep getting stuck in for the last decade plus, 15 years, and get that 8th win? There are going to be 3 names that are going to have big seasons for BC to get there. You can't just have one guy do it. You got to have a full complementary football go on here. And these 3 guys are going to be critical. Let's start with the obvious one. Let's start with the quarterback. And I'm going to go ahead, and I've said this before, that I believe Grayson James is going to be the starter this year. Now, watch this. It's going to be Dylan Larnagin later this year. But let's say that Grayson James wins the quarterback battle. And what do we need to see out of James that takes BC to this next level? Last year, he took over in the Syracuse game and started the last 5 games. Syracuse, he played most of the second half. I think Thomas Castellanos played 1 series or so, and they yanked him, and that was it. But after that, it was all Grayson James. And for the most part, he did pretty well. Even against SMU and in Nebraska, the games that he lost, he still was able to throw the football. But what does he need to do? What does Grayson James need to do? I think continuing to eliminate mistakes. We only saw smatterings of mistakes in a few games last year. The SMU game is the one I go to because BC could have won that if he had not made the mistake he did right before halftime where he forced that interception. I think as long as he doesn't regress and get into chasing plays where he can't be doing that, right? Like part of Bill O'Brien's offense is you've got to take what's given to you and make those throws and make those reads. Chasing a play is going to cause you to make mistakes. Grayson James has not shown that he does that. So that's going to be a super critical key. Additionally, I'd love to see him get a little bit more accurate on his deep balls. There was a few plays last year he did do it. I mean, when you have Reed Harris out there and he's making big jump catches and making big plays for you all over the place, you don't have to be super accurate with your throws because he's just going to get it. But it would be nice too for when, if you're going to throw it to Lewis Bond, he's not the biggest guy out there, or Jaden Skeet. You want to make sure that you get the ball where it needs to be. There were times last year I didn't feel like he had the most accurate deep ball. And I'm not knocking Grayson James here. I think he had a nice end of the year. I'm saying I want he developed over the year. What we saw in Western Kentucky, which I was very worried about, versus the Grayson James that we saw for the last 4 weeks were very, very different. So I'm saying I want to see him continue to grow here. I want to see him get a little bit more behind those deep balls and be able to get that out there and be able to spread the ball around. He's done an excellent job with spreading the ball. Like if you look at how the games go, it's like, volume throws to Lewis Bond, which is what you should be doing, and those, splash plays to Reed Harris, who's got the ability to get up there and get those balls. When you have a wide receiver like Reed Harris, who I think is going to be one of the most underrated wide receivers going into the season, he's not going to get a ton of talk. When they talk about, ACC player of the year, wide receiver of the preseason, and, all ACC teams, he's not going to be on that, which is silly because I think both of him and Lewis Bond are going to be quietly very, very good. But when you have guys like that, how does Grayson James get them the ball and take those shots? Because you gotta open it up. You can't just slowly march down the field all game, because sometimes you make mistakes. And when you soften up a defense like that, those bigger plays will be there. You just got to take the chance. I love Grayson James, the way he came along. I love the way he's able to move the ball. He's tough. That's the part that gets me. Like Castellanos could run the ball. Near the end, he couldn't. But Grayson James run the ball too. But he also has that ability. We saw it a lot last year where he shakes off defenders. That was something we have not seen out of Castellanos. We didn't see much of that, you know, um, very much over the last year plus. Castellanos was a little dude. Grayson James is big. He can shoulder off guys and shake them off. That makes him that much more dangerous. That makes him harder to take down. Grayson, like if you were to look at like how the season went for Grayson James, at the end, would you have put him as a top level ACC quarterback? He wasn't there yet. He wasn't. But was he getting there? Yeah. So that development to continue to get to being a potentially all ACC level quarterback, that's going to be critical. And I'm not asking him to be all ACC. I'm saying, can he be a top 5 quarterback in the ACC? I think he can do that. I think he's going to get no respect. I don't think anyone's going to put him up there. But I think he could do the things, especially with Jonathan DiBiase and Will Lawing and Bill O'Brien behind him. I think that Grayson James could be that guy. Now, as I said before, there's also the potential that Dylan Lonergan wins this whole quarterback situation, and then we're not talking about this in August. But I'm going to pretend. I said I can't read into the future right now, but my prediction is that Grayson James will be the quarterback, and a big season by him will get them to 8 wins. Second, let's go into the defense. In a moment, I want to talk a little bit about who on the defensive side of the ball needs to have a huge year. It's not one that I've talked about a bunch, but I think is someone who is primed for a big year, and they need it out of him. We'll get into that in just a moment. Attention, Locked On Boston College fans. Ever wished you could directly support your favorite Eagles athletes and be part of their journey? Now you can with Roy, the NIL app that puts fans in control. Before Roy, NIL deals were often handled behind closed doors, and fans like you didn't have a clear way to support the players you love. Now, with Roy, you can make a real impact and feel closer to the athletes representing Boston College. With Roy, you get to choose the player you want to support, decide how much you want to contribute, and get exclusive content straight from the athletes you back. The best part, if your player transfers, you get your money back. So it's a risk-free way to show your support and make your voice heard. Support your favorite players directly and help shape the future of Boston College sports. Download the Roy app now from the App Store and start backing Boston College athletes the way they deserve, with transparency, trust, and real impact. This is the future of Boston College sports. Join it now by downloading Roy and supporting your favorite players. Locked On Boston College, AJ Black here. Thank you all again who have made Locked On Boston College your first listen every day. And if you're an everydayer, if you've been listening to me rant and rave about Earl Grant or learning about all the recruits that Boston College is going after, I want to thank each and every one of you that have hit play and have been with me every single day. And if you're thinking about it, I want to encourage you. We're a 5-day-a-week Boston College podcast. I want you to be part of that journey. Now, we're talking about spring football. It opens up. And one little quick note, I noticed it on the, I think it was the Globe that wrote an article on BC, their annual spring football article that said that it looked like from the picture that they have different spring uniforms. For nerds like me that like this kind of stuff, I thought it was pretty cool. I'm interested to see if it's New Balance or New Balance or Adidas because it looks like Adidas is taking over soon. But they're new. That's pretty neat. Also, in that article, it was in the Boston Globe. It mentioned, and I thought this was interesting. I think it was Spencer Dickow, the general manager, who said that BC's only had 3 true transfers since Bill O'Brien took over. Now, a lot of these guys, that are leaving are graduate students, so they're not technically, they're not leaving. They might have been in conversation, that they're not going to have a spot after graduation, things like that. That happens. So I thought that was interesting. That it's been that little that they've had all these players buy in. That tells you a lot about where this program's going. Now, let's get into the defensive side of the ball. You look at the passing numbers last year, and they weren't great. They were in the hundreds in terms of passing yards allowed. And you obviously were able to mask some deficiencies when you had the Tasmanian Devil, Donovan Azaraku, at your edge rush. With 16 and a half sacks, he was everywhere. Offenses had to scheme against him all the time. I have talked about the edge rushers to death. I'm not talking about them here because if you want to know why they have to step up, go back to a previous episode. I've gone into it. I feel like you guys have heard it. To me, however, the biggest key in terms of defensive players for next year is going to be Bam Crouch. There's lots of other positions where there's going to be battles, so I can't really say defensive tackle, you're going to have a bunch of guys that could be doing it. Edge, same thing. You're going to have Quintavious Hutchins and a whole bunch of other guys. Bam Crouch is your leader on defense this year. That's Davion Crouch. You watch what he did in the Pinstripe Bowl, and you saw finally that Boston College has a linebacker that's built in the style of a prototypical NFL linebacker. Jeff Hafley had a style. He would go mostly, sometimes he didn't, but for the most part, a lot of his linebackers were safe, like these guys that were hybrids. They were safeties, usually strong safeties, that were built bigger than a safety, but smaller than most of your typical linebackers. So they're, like 6'1", 6'2", fast, but not the biggest guys. Crouch breaks that mold. He's a bigger dude. He was one that Hafley recruited, and he was an edge rusher / linebacker. They kept him back in the linebacker position because he's so explosive. This is his final year, which is crazy because I feel like we're just getting to know him. And it'll be him and most likely Owen McGowan in the linebacker spots. And you'll probably see a smattering of maybe like Jalen Blackwell or Bryce Steele back there as well. But Bam's going to be out there, every snap from here on out as long as he's healthy. And when I look at what BC is losing, they lost Donovan Azaraku. What was it about him that made him so special? He's a game changer. Donovan Azaraku was explosive. He was disruptive. Every time they snapped the ball, there was a chance that Azaraku was going to make a play. But Bam Crouch is not going to be that. Every play, at least. But I think he's got that sense that will make him a disruptive force that BC desperately needs on defense. I think when I'm looking at all these players out there, Quintavious Hutchins probably would be 1B in this discussion because he needs to have a big year too. But when I'm looking at it, Crouch to me, in terms of the trajectory of his development, he's like right on that edge of being something special at linebacker. 14 tackles in the Pinstripe Bowl. He played a ton of snaps this last year. And he's fast, he's powerful, he's big. That's what you need. And I look at Bam. I look at, if he's next to Owen McGowan is a instinctual, good linebacker. He's not the biggest dude out there, but he knows what he's doing. I think of Crouch as kind of that field general, the guy that's going to go out there and make big plays for you. And I would think that Tim Lewis and that defense is going to use him in a variety of ways. He could be in coverage. Of course, he's going to be very good, I think, in run defense. But if you're struggling with your pass rush, which I think BC may at times, Crouch might be that guy that they send on blitzes a lot. You're going to see the secondary, I'm sure. Guys like KP Price and Carter Davis, they did that a lot in the Pinstripe Bowl, or they did it a fair amount throughout the season. But Crouch might be another one that you're thinking of when you need to dial something up to put extra guys after the quarterback. He might be your guy. So I'm looking at Bam Crouch. I'm looking at a guy who I think could not only lead Boston College in tackles, but also get in there for tackles for loss and help the run defense. I think that's going to be key. Is how does he not just make tackles, but is he doing well in coverage? Can he make sure that those short and intermediate routes are covered? I think he can. How does he stuff the run? You lose Cam Horsley too. You've got guys that could jump in. I think there's plenty of guys that we could see and we'll talk about as we start to see who kind of ekes into that first round. I mean, that starter realm. They could be it. But I look at Davion Bam Crouch. To me, my prediction for him is this is a guy that could be getting national talk by the end of the year. Not Bronco Nagurski Award, things like that. But could he be in the talk for all ACC? I think there's a fair chance that could happen. And he's just going to have to continue to develop. Like he wasn't there at the end of last year, but could he? I could see it. So Bam Crouch to me is someone I think that's going to be really critical because you're going to need to to win 8 games, especially with the schedule that you have in front of you. You're going to need a star on defense. You need someone to jump up. And I'm not asking for somebody like Donovan Azaraku. You're not going to get those guys all the time. But you're going to need players that can consistently make plays that put you in positive situations. And I think Bam Crouch could be that guy. Now, as I said, I would be totally fine too if come November we're talking about Quintavious Hutchins as the guy, or someone else on that line. I think Hutchins needs to have a big year. My worry about him is that, and I think this is a fair worry here, is that his emergence only came because everyone was funneling in towards Donovan Azaraku. That when they spread things out, like we saw in the Nebraska game, he kind of got neutralized. So hopefully they can figure that piece out. But if they could, maybe it's going to be Quintavious Hutchins. Maybe Q will be the guy. That'd be a cool story too, because he's gone from practically nothing to, if he potentially became a star by the end of his career, that's development right there. And that's the key to BC football, right? In our final segment, I have a freshman I want to talk about. Yes, a freshman that I think is going to be absolutely critical for football to win 8 games. I'll tell you who that is in just a moment. The Armada Team of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan and their all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, our locked-on college basketball experts are picking one team that stands apart from top-seeded stars to the unexpected upsets. These guys show their strength and sheer power needed to push their team forward. This week's Armada and clear-cut Team of the Week are the Blue Duke Devils. John Shire's team, led by National Player of the Year candidate Cooper Flagg, just ripped through the ACC going 19-1. Hey, you guys saw what he did to the Eagles. The Blue Devils were plus 434 points in ACC games, the largest point differential by a power conference team in league play since Kentucky in 1953 and 1954. When it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer, and that's exactly what the Blue Devils have done here. It's clear that our Team of the Week is out here and ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can with the all-new Nissan Armada or any of the Nissan's outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder, and go find your next big adventure. Shop Nissan USA today. Wrapping things up, Locked On Boston College here. On tomorrow's show, I am going to get into the first day of camp. My writer, Mike Sidley, will be there. I can't make it to today's practice, but he's going to be there, and I'm going to be able to get some of the details of what happened. We'll talk about all the big stories that came out of that first day of practice, including what Bill O'Brien had to say. So make sure to check out Locked On Boston College on YouTube or where you get podcasts. But we're talking 8 wins today. The white whale of Boston College sports. When will BC football get there? The hope is this year. We already talked about a player on offense, a player on defense. What about special teams? And what about a freshman? Yeah, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to say I'm putting some pressure on a true freshman and someone not even from this country. As a player, I think needs to have a big season to get you 8 wins, and that is Andy Quinn. Last year, punting was a complete disaster. Bill O'Brien is smart. He's a smart coach. And his teams, I think, are going to need a good special teams. Last year's special teams weren't good. They weren't good at all. Both kicking, punting, it's all been kind of a mess. Now you have, his staff has done a nice job of going out and fixing a lot of that. You have the same kickers. You did not bring in any new kickers for this season. But the punting, having defenses be, on the other side of the field, pushing back opposing offenses is a nice luxury to have. And BC never did that. They were always starting, the 40, 30, 38-yard line. They were all, sometimes even like midfield. That's not good. You're basically giving away free points when you do that. This year, Sam Candotti's gone. Ivan Savanko's gone. You may go with Sam Stone, and please don't use Liam Connor again as a punter. He did fine. All the power to him. He was the best out of all of them, but he should be focusing on his kicking because that needs to be improved too. You have 2, Andy Quinn and Seamus Florio. It could be Seamus Florio. It really could. This is the transfer punter from Yale. I'm going to go with Andy Quinn. Seamus Florio has, if you look at the stats, he's a good positional punter, but he's not the biggest booming punter. I hope, and my hope when I get to practice is that when I watch Andy Quinn, this kid from Ireland, get up there, that those punts are banging off the ceiling of the fish house. If you didn't know this, the fish house is not high enough, and I'm sure most indoor facilities are like this, that when they punt it, many times when they really boom them, they're bouncing off the rafters. And so you don't really get to, until they get outside, you don't get to see how far some of these go. But I'm hoping with Andy Quinn, because one thing that you can really hope for, that could really, this piece that was missing last year is field position. Yes, you want to be able to march down the field, but sometimes when you're starting to try to find out what's, feeling them out, not getting things going right away, pinning them back over and over again will help you get out of those ruts. They will give you shorter fields to march. And I trust that Grayson James in that offense, Turbo Richards, all those guys, they're going to be able to get out of those ruts a lot faster if they can punt the ball. I can't underestimate. Undersell. And I'm speaking to the choir. You guys all saw it last year, just how bad BC punting was. They were dead last. I'm not just saying this as a hyperbole. And you guys are going, AJ, yeah, no kidding. They were dead last in the country. They averaged 36 yards a punt, which seems high compared to some of the things I saw. How many 25-yard punts did we watch? But they were 3 yards away, from the nearest Power 4 football team, which was UNC. That's how bad things were. You got to fix that. And that in itself will make your team that much better. So I look at this at Andy Quinn, and I hate putting pressure on a freshman. It's gonna be either him or the transfer, but I'm gonna talk about Quinn for this one. If he has a big year, it's gonna make the road to 8 wins that much easier. I'm gonna say Andy Quinn needs to have a big year, and I can't wait to see how he looks to start off camp, which I have to say is a little bit deceiving because when I watch at camp sometimes, I keep saying it. Last year, the punters, when I watched spring and summer camp, they looked fine. When you watch them in the game, they were a disaster. So hopefully things have changed. All right. Thank you all. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about camp, everything that happened, what Bill O'Brien had to say. Is there any big updates? You're going to want to know. Check out Locked On BC YouTube, wherever you get podcast. Follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247. And I'll see you again tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.